So once again, hello everyone, and thank you very much for being here in this meeting. Thanks, Darish, for arranging these meetings and helping us to network, to learn about each other, and to have the opportunity to know what are the opportunities out there. In the previous sessions, we have had very good talks, mostly technical talks. But I was thinking about the purpose of these meetings, and as Darius several times said, one of the purposes is that to find the opportunities and create something out of the knowledge that people have in the researches or in the technical areas that people are expert in. So I thought maybe we can have this topic a little bit less technical and a bit more towards the business side of the startup business, startup ecosystem. So today I'm going to talk about how we try to do our projects based on lean startup methodology, and how to avoid many of the pitfalls that startup companies, technology startup companies fall into as they walk through the journey of startup. Now, I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, can everybody see my screen, the blue presentation?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So first, I want to give you a very quick background of Artintech. Artintech is a technology company that is based on Toronto. We develop technologies mainly for manufacturing, operations, and supply chain. And I'm going to talk a little bit about these companies, these technologies, but the main thing is that we always have the same issues that generally startups have when we start a new product. So I'm going to walk you through one of the products that we have developed and how did we come up with some specific ways to avoid the problems and issues. Now, I can go to the next. Now, the problem is the problem that many people have faced is that around 90% of startups fail. And when we say 90% of the startups fail, they don't fail in the first year. Some of them fail in the second year or third year, but they fail as a young company. They don't get to the 10th year or even 5th year. The statistics that I have seen are quite different. They vary. Some people say 80%. There are some more precise information that say 86%, 90%. But this is what I found in Investopedia. I think it's like one of the researches that have been done about the failure rate of the startup companies. But what it really shows us is that coming up with an idea and even creating a company around that idea is easy. But making a success story out of that is what is quite difficult, right? And this is probably one of the scariest parts of the startup journey, because many people start their own company because they don't want to work for other people. This is a major reason why people start their own companies. They think that we have a brilliant idea and then we're gonna change the world and we're going to be the next Bill Gates, and we don't want to work for other people and we want to have holidays whenever we want. So it's one of these reasons that people, but then thinking of 90% of these people fail and they go back to the jobs that they hated in the first place is a scary thought. There was a research in the United States a few years ago, and they asked many people do you want to start a new company or you want to work for other people? And more than 50% of Americans wanted to start a new company, have their own business. But again, imagine 300 million people, more than half of them said that yes, we can and we want to start a new company. But imagine like 90% of that huge number are destined to fail or not even start in the first place. So we are dealing with a huge waste of energy. One of the topics that I teach in university is economy. And when it comes to economy, we're looking at the national level resources, and imagine we have a huge amount of activities going on, and 90% of the energy and the resources being used in that activity, we call it like startup ecosystem, is being wasted. This is a huge failure in a national level and in a global level. So one of the ideas was probably we need to rethink the way that startup companies do their projects and bring in the ideas into the real life. You have a new, I don't know, software in mind, you have a new app in mind, you have a new device in mind, right? So what to do to avoid that kind of a huge failure? So the classic way of thinking about startup is that think about the issues that many of these startups face are either financial problems, they run out of money, they cannot generate enough money, failure in sales, they come up with a nice idea but nobody buys. And I have in Toronto, I have seen startups that have come with brilliant ideas, but they failed to identify that they overestimated how attractive this is for the markets, right? And sometimes, you know, even people love the idea, but when it comes to paying for that product, they're not ready to pay. So that is why, for example, in investment groups, when you go to an investor, they want to see two things. They want to see proof of concept and proof of market. Like proof of concept is what? Proof of concept is to show them that your solution is working, to show them that the idea that you had is feasible and it's working and a couple of people can actually use it, right? But what is even more important, and you cannot attract serious investors, you cannot get to the second round and third round of investment, is that you need to provide a proof of market. And proof of market doesn't mean that your cousins are using the product or only your, I don't know, your uncle's factory is using your device. No, it means that enough number of people have purchased your product and they're paying for it, right? So that is what we call proof of market. And this is where many startups fail and they cannot get to the next round. And sometimes the solution is wrong. The solution is not the best. We have all heard about the story of the American astronauts. I seriously don't know if it's an anecdote or it's a real story, but the story goes like, well, the astronauts could not write with their pens on the space station because the pen needs gravity to pull the ink down, and they spend millions of dollars to come up with a magic pen that can actually write on space. And meanwhile, Russians were using with pencil, which doesn't need gravity. So this is an example of classic startup story where we fall in love with our solution and the technology that we are good at or the technology that we have created. Whereas we should fall in love with something else, and that is the problem that we want to solve, right? So instead of falling in love with technologies that we have, successful startups fall in love with the problem that they want to solve. So if this technology doesn't work, that's fine. We don't love technology. We love the problem that we are solving. So they go for another solution for that problem, right? But it is not easy to tell an engineer that this genius device that you have created is not the solution, leave it and go for another device or for another solution. Wrong solution is another issue that many of the startups face, and they start something with wholeheartedly with love, and then they don't realize that they're going the wrong way, and they spend all of their resources on it. Now, lean startup is one of several solutions that have been proposed, and it is being practiced widely in North American startup companies. It is not the only solution. There are other solutions that compete with lean startup in success rate, but this is one of the best solutions, perhaps. Well, I don't want to give a lecture on lean startup, but rather I just want to tell you how we used this idea in our company a couple of times, not even once, a couple of times. And again, I don't want to claim that we are using it by the book. We are not exactly following every page of the lean startup book, but we are trying our best to keep the idea in mind as we are developing new products every time. So again, the idea behind lean startup is the classic idea of startup companies. Identify the problem, and again, I want to emphasize, identify the problem. Many people first come up with the new technology, and then they try to find this problem that this technology can solve. That has worked, but that also is one of the reasons that many startups fail, because their focus is on advancing, spending all of their resources on a technology that may or may not solve a problem. So first, we need to identify the problem that we want to solve, and we need to have a deep understanding of that problem. Sometimes people have a technology, they find a problem, they think that they understand the problem, they go and try to fit this technology in that problem, and then later they find out, oh, well, we didn't have a deep understanding of many issues that this problem would have, right? And then they kind of underestimate the complexity of the problem. In mathematics way, they underestimate the number of variables that cause that problem and the complexity of the solution that is required for that problem. And when I say complexity, I don't always mean technical complexity or physical complexity, sometimes social complexity, or even human cultural complexity. So don't limit yourself to only technical issues, technological issues and stuff like that. Sometimes it's just simply non-technical complexities that add to the complexity of the problem. And then once you have this understanding, you need to test your understanding, right? So it's a kind of evaluation of how well you understand the problem. Now, when we're thinking about like Art in Tech right now, we have a number of like smaller software applications, but the two softwares that we have already put in the market and they're being used by companies in Canada and overseas are Packs and Packs. Packs is a supply chain management software. Packs is a quality management software. And we are creating a robotic system right now. It's in one of the phases of the lean startup as we are talking. Now, when we started Packs, we made a couple of mistakes. And when we were starting Packs, we tried to not repeat those mistakes. So now I'm going to talk about how we started Packs and how we went from nothing, almost nothing, to a comprehensive solution that we are selling to companies right now. So Reza is here. Reza is the one who initiated this project. One day he came to me, and he told me the story of how in the company that he's working, they're using Excel sheets to they're not even using Excel sheets. They have like paper procedures, and he has created an Excel sheet to keep track of the quality procedures. And just to keep in mind, he was working in a very good, I don't want to name the company, but he was working in a very good aerospace company. So we are not talking about a small immature company. We are talking about a very good company, and they were still struggling with handling their quality procedures. And again, aerospace, the level of the quality preciseness that you need in aerospace is equal or even sometimes higher than pharmaceutical. So those are top quality sensitive industries, and yet you could see that, well, they're struggling in having a proper system in place. Now, he's a genius. I'm telling him, probably this for the first time when I saw the Excel sheet with all of the macros and complexity that he has created to manage the process. I was impressed, and but I saw the potential in creating a better solution for that, because there was a problem. What was the problem? The problem was a high-level company was struggling with managing the solution. And I told myself, if this company is struggling in managing these processes, that should be the same in the whole industry. So step number one was identifying issue. That has already been done by Reza. And we did a bit of research, and we saw that, okay, other companies are also doing more or less the same. So some companies have systems in place, but some companies are still using Excel sheets here and there to manage their processes. And well, are there huge ERPs in place? Yes, there are, like SAPs and Oracles of, but the problem was that the investments required for them to implement those systems, and the amount of resources that has to be used to put them in place was probably too much for many companies to go through it to put it in place for their quality processes. So what we did in the next phase, mainly done by Reza, was to do a research that are there no other products in the market to manage these quality processes. And Reza did a comprehensive research in the market. So that was the market research. And we found that there are products in the market and they are selling, but none of them are dominant. So to me, that is a good sign. Some people would say that, okay, so that means that we already have competitors. So let's not do this, right? Especially when you're talking in the startup companies, this is one of the, I find it one of the most misunderstood concepts in the startup ecosystem. Why? Because as soon as you find that somebody else has done something, you give up, and people give up, and people say, okay, so your product is not innovative, your product is not unique, and you're not going to succeed. To me, it's absolutely opposite, because it shows that other products are solving the same problem and they are selling, and they are quite successful in what they sell. The only thing is that, well, we can solve some of the gaps that they have, and the fact that none of them is dominant yet, it means that the market is not monopolized by any of these companies. So that means there is room for competition over there, and the market demand is large enough to support all of these competitors. So that was a positive sign for me, contrary to what many people would think that, okay, there are other products, we're not going to succeed. No, I always say, think about barbershops. How many barbershops are in this on the city in Toronto? Many, right? But yet again, if you find even one neighborhood with less than 2 barbershops, there's a chance that if you start a barbershop over there, you can have enough customers to survive. So that is what I think. Sometimes some markets are saturated. For example, if you start a new restaurant in Toronto, there is a huge chance that you fail because that market is saturated. We have too many restaurants for the demand in the market. Same goes with some of the technologies that we have in place. There is another scenario that a product is dominated, the market is dominated by a couple of major players like Coke and Pepsi, like accounting softwares that are in market right now. Everybody's either using Zoho or QuickBooks, or if they're larger, they're using Sage or Oracle products. So that market is kind of dominated. It's very, very difficult to compete with them. But again, if there are a couple of famous names in the market, don't get scared. Because what is also important is to notice which segments in the market they are managing. For example, in the domain of ERPs, SAP is a huge name, then it follows by Oracle, right? But the companies that those big names are serving are usually a large scale company. Those are serving higher end of industry. But 90% of the companies in the market cannot afford to implement SAP or Oracle, right? Or they do not have enough skilled, trained specialists to manage those systems. So what happens is that if you go one level lower than those companies, you can see that suddenly there are like 40 different ERPs in the market, right? So it's not only important to see which companies are dominating the market, it is also important to know which parts of the market they're dominating. There are usually other parts of the market that is not being touched by those very large companies, because the scale that they're working at are not, or the part of the problem that they're solving are either too general, so you can find your niche markets, or too expensive, so again you can find other parts of the market that you can serve. Now it goes with software industry. It also goes with hardware industry, other technologies, and even non-technological solutions and services. Now, after we did this initial research, what we did again was not to build the product. The promise of this journey was that we are not going to build a product unless we actually sell the product. Okay, and you would say, okay, so how do you sell a product if you don't have the solution, if you don't have the software, right? Now, first of all, we are not the first person to do this. If you remember the story of Bill Gates, he sold Microsoft DOS to IBM before he actually completed Microsoft DOS. So all he sold was the idea of how he can implement this and a good reputation that he already had in the market before that, right? So we did almost the same thing, but with a small difference. Instead of just selling the idea, we actually made a prototype. Now, the prototype that we built was we used Adobe XD, which is a software to build prototypes, working prototypes. It's not like Photoshop. When you're building a screen with a Photoshop, it's not functional. But with Adobe XD, with almost the same effort, or even easier than creating a software with I know Photoshop or those image products, you can create a software that actually shows the functionality, but it is not coded. So there's no database behind it, there's no coding behind it, but still some clients wouldn't even notice that. It looks as if it's working. You push a button, it goes to the next page, but it's all only the front screen. So and it's like 100 times faster to create and modify this prototype instead of like actually building the software. So what we did, we spent almost a year actually to, but not a full-time 1 year. Every week we were getting together and we were like spending some hours making a prototype. Then during the week, Reza was doing the research and coming back with new ideas. And then we completed this prototype. I want to spend like 2 minutes to show you what I mean by the prototype for the people who have not worked with XD before. Or maybe I put it up from. And this is my last slide, so I'm not going to take too much time here. Yeah, here. Okay, so this is the prototype of the software that we built. Now, if you are a quality expert in a company, just by looking at it, you know that, okay, it is covering all of your needs, right? And if you want to look further, you click on it, okay, this is the NCMR list of the NCRs, and then you can click.
Could you show the slide, Amir, please? Could you share
Pardon?
the slide?
Is it
Could
not
you share
shared?
the, no. Isn't the middle green one share a screen?
But it is shared.
It
is
is.
shared.
That is shared already.
I can't see the slides. Okay. So
Maybe it's not
Yes.
updated for your business.
Okay.
Is it? Can everybody else see the software that I'm showing?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I see it.
I'm watching.
Okay. Okay,
Oh,
great.
Sorry
So,
for the
as you can see, it looks as if it's a real software, and I can simply click on the links and it works and save, go back, go to RCCA forms, and I can scroll down and it shows all of the parts of it. But what you sometimes don't notice is that there's no database behind it. So all of the names are repeating, and it's just showing you how it could work in the reality. So if I go back to my presentation, so here, what we did, we actually built a prototype. Now you would say that, okay, so this is just a software prototype. What if we have a hardware? I'm going to get to that too. But after we built the prototype, we contacted our partners and our salespeople and the ones that were in touch with clients, and we educated them on all of the features of the software, right? So that was the next step. And keep in mind, we still don't have any software. We still don't, at this point, we don't have any database behind it. It's just a demo, right? So after we showed this to our associates and our partners, sales channels, they started to talk to their clients. And I think after we finished the prototype, we have not even at that point finished our last modules, where one of our partners came back to us and said, I'm working with a company that they need a quality management system. Can you help? Can you help them? We said yes, and then we presented that to the CEO of the company. The CEO liked, said, how long would it take for you to complete it? We said 3 to 6 months, we will have your basic modules, and then after that, another 3 months, the rest of the modules, and say, okay, go ahead. Of course, it took a little bit longer than that for negotiation and stuff like that, but we finally signed the contract. So what we really did was basically we sold the product just with a prototype without actually having the product, right? And after that, now we have the product, and if a new company comes to us, instead of 9 months, probably they can have it in 1 week. So this is the progress where we walked from just an idea and a simple Excel sheet, right, to a much more complicated solution, a much more comprehensive solution with a much more useful software behind it, and then creating a prototype and then selling it to the market. right? Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our past experience and the next product that we are putting in the market. When we were doing the same thing for Aero Packs, which is a supply chain management software, unlike this time, we didn't know how to use Adobe XD. So what we were doing, again, we were talking about the client, the first client was in 2016. About how the features would look like. We created even a nice paper catalog for that. Those days you could actually go and visit the clients. So we were able to do all of these, but the problem was we were not able to show a nice prototype like this to the client. So after we built the first software for them, they started to understand what we were talking about in like 3 months before or 6 months before, and they started to think about all of the changes that they wanted to make, right? And it was extremely expensive for us to go back and restructure the database, rewrite the codes, refactor all of the technology, and then make those changes. Even though those changes were very minor in the eyes of the customer, it was very expensive for us to implement. And we were in a contract and we kind of lost money on our first contract in 2016. We lost big time, right? But, and then when the second sales was much easier because we already had a working software in place. And when the second client saw that software, they knew that, okay, these are the things that are working, probably we want changes here and there, right? So the first version, which was a big fail financially, was a big failure for us, acted as a prototype for us in the next sales. But again, if we knew how to work with a nice and good prototyping software, it could save us like tens of thousands of dollars. Now, the next technology that we are putting in the market after QualiPacks and Aero Packs is something we call Aero Packs. Like Aero Packs is a robotic system that works on production lines. I don't want to get too much into the details of that system, but simply think of it as a visual inspector which can move products around on a production conveyor. Now you would say that, okay, now what you want to do, because you don't have an Adobe XD for robots, right? What do you want to do now? So first of all, we need to recognize that this product, especially the non-physical, non-software product, is a mixture of software and hardware, right? So still the software part we can create with XD without even actually creating it. But a big part of that is the proof of concept, where we need to show the client that this is what we could potentially do. So again, instead of creating creating a robot that can handle all kinds of products, we have selected a small number of easy to identify products to create a prototype. And now the robot can identify between apples and oranges, and it can also identify between plastic and metal and paper and glass. So it's a very small, and it's not a comprehensive solution that covers all of the needs, but it's a very small, and the robotic hand is a small handle. It's again not a comprehensive robotic complicated control system, but this is targeted to be done by the end of this year. And that is enough for us to go forward with potential customers and say, hey, this is how it works. What else do you want to see? What other parts do you need in the software part, in the hardware part? What are the conditions and standards that we have to meet? And well, this is how long it's going to take. And for sure, the first client would want lighter version of that, less complicated version of that. And then once you have that in place, that will act as a as an even better prototype when you go to the second client and third client, right? So I just wanted to share the story of how we are using the ideas behind Lean Startup and going step by step and creating things only after they are actually being required by the market. Instead of we creating something and then pushing into the market, we wait to see if something is actually needed in the market. We create prototype, we make sure that the customers are paying for that, then we create it. And once we created that, that acts as an even better prototype, and we advance the technology to the next level. Okay, Darshan, this is all I wanted to talk about. This is my contact information here if somebody needs to contact me. But I don't know how much time we have. I hope I have not gone over the time. We can have Q&A if you want, or Darish wanted to explain about our future meetings too, so probably move to that part.
Thanks, Amjad, for a very fantastic experience you shared with us. That was very valuable for us. If anybody has any, we have time by 12:30, I think, or if there is more question, you can stay longer. So I think the next, as you told, the next plan in our this meetings, kind of meetings, again about the startups. I think Dr. Moshiri will talk about it if doesn't mind. So first of all, let's see if there is any question about your presentation.
Thanks very much, Amir. I enjoyed your presentation. It was very nice, by the way. Yeah. But usually, you know, the word lean as a lean body or lean institute is an institute in the body that usually we incline or rely on that. We have tendency towards using some sort of assistance body, if you say. So first of all, I thought probably you are talking about the big companies that they have the startups, and now the small one should have tendency towards some sort of showing inclination towards that people. In some parts of your actually presentation, you were addressing such this point. You were talking about the very big, huge amount of assets of the big companies, and then you told some companies just waiting whether they get the idea of those, they are licensing in rather than licensing out. Licensing in means purchasing the technology from other companies. Yeah. Licensing out means the selling the technology. But in other words, you were emphasizing that leaning in this part means we have to wait until the society responds to us or society needs us. I just wanted to understand a bit, distinguish between these two, if you could just explain it, if you have enough time.
Good point, Sajjad. You see, the word lean in the lean startup concept comes from quality systems, where lean refers to elimination of all wastes. So that is where it comes from. It's an old concept in quality management practice, and it means eliminating all of the wastes. Now, when it comes to startup, in the Lean Startup book, it mentions that the largest waste in startup is the waste of time and resources, right? And one of the reasons that we have a huge waste in startup environment is that we build a system that is not exactly a good fit for the market, and we go back and make changes, and then again go back to the market. And so the Lean Startup methodology suggests that stop doing that. Don't build something and then go and test the market. Test the market, and then based on the needs of the market, gradually build the product. This is what
somewhat optimizing in this way would be, yeah.
Not even optimizing, even building it. And one of the nice examples in the book was about a startup company in, I think in Chicago, or one of the cities in US. They were thinking about building a software, an app to get delivery orders from people. Simple as that. So what they did, first, they went to a coffee shop, two co-founders. They went to a coffee shop and they looked around and they found an elderly woman who wanted the service. So what they did for several months, they were going to the door of this person and then collecting the order on paper, taking the order to the market, and then buying the products, going back, and every time they were charging $10. Now, but this process helped them to better understand the dynamics of the market, the shops around them, and so on and so forth, right? Then they started to get the same order from more people. Now, the idea was they were not automating anything unless they could not handle it manually. So when the number of clients grew, they started to take orders by email. Still, they didn't have the app. And then they built the first module of the app for automating the order and arrangement once they could not handle the emails anymore. So what they did, you would think that, okay, they wasted a lot of time, but what they actually did, they saved a lot of time and energy on building an app without exactly knowing what is the need of the market, what are the dynamics of the supply chain, what are the logistic issues, and so on and so forth, right? So when we say lean startup in a startup ecosystem environment, we mean stop wasting, because eliminating waste is the idea of lean in the quality management system. So stop wasting time and don't develop anything unless you have a deep understanding of the problem.
Thanks very much. Considering CRM, customer relation management, somewhat in your talk.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. It was very, very obvious actually answer to the question. Thanks very much indeed.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Emirjan. This was very good explanation. And to confirm your what you said, let me bring a short story about the log company, LUGG, that they are made an app to help for the moving. Mm-hmm. But before starting the company, the owner rented a truck and went to IKEA, and then in the middle of a hot day, waited for a customer with a big shopping, I don't know, the bed, something like this. And then when he tried to bring it to the car, they went to them, the person went to them, the CEO of company, and asked, do you need help? If there is an app that you can call somebody to help you in the moving. And the gentleman said, yes, I need it. And then he said, okay, wait, I'm going to do it for you. And then he went and came back with the truck. And the man said, oh, you are the same person that you offered me the app. He said, yes, I'm trying to evaluate the market, you know. So it's the right story. But may I ask you to give me some clue about how did you market research and survey your market? Can you?
Yeah, of course. Well, for Quality Packs, the initial stage was already done by Reza because he was already in the aerospace industry. He was already familiar with auto industry, so he had those expert insider insights. And we already knew that companies are struggling with this problem, with the problem of properly managing their quality processes. But then again, the next stage was to study the market in terms of competitors. And that part was not so difficult because all of the competitors are technology companies. They had proper websites, and we searched the market as if we want to buy the product. So what we did, we compared the features that they had, we compared their size, we compared their information, and we figured that, well, there are like 5-6 companies in the scale. Now, probably, if you ask me, there are probably more than 5 or 6, but that time we found 5 or 6 obvious ones in the market. Mm-hmm. We're covering parts of the problem. We're answering the parts of the problem. But what was quite obvious was that all of them are selling, but none of them are dominant. And that was a clue that we started. But then again, we did not build the product unless we actually had a real concept.
Yeah, good. Okay, if you let me, I will be in touch with you to get more information and your experience, use your experience.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Will be my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amisha, I think I missed some part of your talk. You talk about a project that is a mixture of hardware and software. How do you develop the prototype by this kind of projects?
This is a little bit different. The software part can be developed again, almost the same, but because this one needs a bit of like AI behind it, so we actually have to code a little bit, otherwise the hardware won't work. But again, we keep it light. So we don't create an AI with like 99% accuracy that can identify all of the objects. We are creating a much lighter AI that is going to need much less time for training, much less resources to run. And we are just going to show what is the possibility that this project can create. And then the first client definitely is going to need a very simple version of that. And we are aware of that, and we are okay with that. And again, I want to emphasize that we are not the first company to create this. So again, we have done the research. We know that there are some other companies that are doing this for different purposes, and they're using this technology to solve an old issue of like arranging and organizing and sorting products on the production line. But the pathway to get to a very comprehensive solution is to start with a very light prototype, which is actually a servo motor, a very simple robotic hand, and AI behind it, a camera, and a conveyor line. It's quite simple, but it is good enough to show the customer that they can invest in our solution. Now, the way that you negotiate with the first customer is also quite important. First of all, the first client is usually going to offer you perhaps enough to cover your costs. So, or even less than that. And we are okay with that because we can have enough funding to top that up and come up with this with the first product. And the other thing is that you need to negotiate the time with the client. So as long as you have the funds, or at least part of the fund, now you need to make sure that you have enough time to make the first client happy, right? Once that is done, now you have a happy client, you have a working product in the market. Now you can go to the next client, which is going to ask for a little bit more complicated system. And by the time that you get to your 10th client, you have a very good system working in place. But again, I want to suggest, what I wanted to suggest was that for software, we did it one way. For a mixture of software and hardware, we're tweaking it a little bit. But the idea of lean startup that don't develop a product, don't invest too much on it, don't make it too complicated before you actually have a client using it, and before you have a deep understanding of the market, is what we keep. But then how you implement that idea in your startup is quite it quite depends on your creativity, actually.
Thank you.
Can I have a question too?
Yeah, of course, Manu.
Thank you very much for your very useful presentation. Especially, I enjoyed the idea of using Adobe XD. But the question is that for the mixture of software and hardware, can Adobe XD also communicate with the real world somehow? I mean, can you, for example?
Well, it is possible, but it is not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, for the part that we are communicating with the real world, the physical devices, we are actually doing coding. The idea is that we keep the coding. There is a concept in lean startup, we call it minimum viable product, MVP.
Yeah.
So we are keeping MVP very light and just good enough to show that we have this capability. So once the client sees that, well, there is a visual inspection and it actually moves the products here and there, now they can trust you can probably do a little bit more complicated function for them. But when we use XD, it is to show that if the management panel and the control panel and the dashboard and everything is completed, how it's going to look like. But that's okay if you like have some parts in XD, some parts actually coded, minimum coded, and then there's some hardware working. The servo motors are connected to our processors and but we are keeping everything minimal.
Is it possible to run a code if you click on a key in the Adobe XD environment? I mean, can it respond by running a code?
It is, but I have not tried it. To be honest, I'm not expert in all of that in XD.
Thank you so much.
I've heard that it is possible. That's the best way to put it.
Amisha, one more question. After building the prototype and showing it to the consumers, if the consumers are happy with the prototype, you are going to build and then sell it. So who will be the investor? Do you invest on the completing the product, making a complete product, or the consumer will invest, or you will get an investor?
Well, in the startup environment, there are two types of startups. One type depends on investors. The other type, we call it bootstrap. So bootstrap means the owner and the founder and the team of the startup would invest their personally on the at least initial phases of the product until the valuation of the company is large enough to go public or to go for larger investors. And some of them don't even do either of them. They just bootstrap until the company is successful. The other idea is to have initial small investments and then build something, get next round of investments, get more customers on it, increase the value of your company, and then take more serious investors. If you think about the investment environment in Toronto, think about like getting $20,000 from somebody to have your initial idea in place and make a couple of sales, then take maybe $100,000 to $200,000. And then once your company has enough number of clients, the value is large enough, then go for $1 or $2 million and then next rounds. But how we are doing it so far, we are bootstrapping. So it's mostly my own personal investments and the time and energy of people like Reza, who are like product partners in our company. He's bringing ideas, he's putting his own time, and we're building it. We have paid developers in our team. They're on their company's payroll, and most of the money that we have for them either come from our existing clients, or if necessary, I invest myself in the company. So far, next year we are going to see if we can go for larger investors, hopefully. But so far, it's been bootstrapped.
Thanks very much indeed. As a matter of fact, as Morteza Dariush also mentioned about the next talk will be delivered by two persons who are expert in the business. Dr. Siavash Shekrian has got a PhD in the law in Toronto, in spite of his background in BSc is electronic, by the way. And his wife, Melika Mirambegi, has studied business management also in Toronto. and they have established a company, Bay & Co. And even they have been in touch with me, and they asked me for the mentoring. However, they have initiated this actually new company. But however, I think they are very expert in the how to develop the startup, incubator, virtual capital, angel invest, and all this stuff. Probably is a time that they may give a good talk for us and could help us, give us some hints how we can develop our startup. Because one of the philosophy of our gathering was this, how we can merge our all activities from point of technical as well as from point of the human resource. So I think probably in next 2 weeks, we will have such this actual talk, and we try to have some question and answering and see whether we can be guided to a way, to the right path as soon as possible to merge all of the potentials of all the persons here, or probably our other guests who will join us in future. So I think probably he will or she will send the agenda of his and her talk, and then Dariush will just announce that in our gathering announcement. Okay,
Interesting. We are eager for the next meeting. And thank you, Amajan, for your very, very good presentation.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Moshiri. Thanks, Darshan, and thank you, Bahman, for.
Thank you.
I think I have seen you in all of the meetings, and I think that's a great support for our community. And again, I don't know how to emphasize the importance of what Dariush is doing. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time, and I really appreciate your efforts, Dariush.
Thank you, Amajan.
Thank you, Darshan.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much. Stay safe, and hopefully.
Thank you. Be safe.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you in the next meeting. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.